So we're going to continue Perek Tet, chapter 29, the second half. We began last week to discuss this chapter. And in this chapter, he goes into more detail as to how to do battle with the Sitra Achara, with the impure forces. After all, they are the ones that stand in the way. They are the ones that want to cool us off, to become detached from our connection with Hashem. They were created for that purpose. Nonetheless, we are given the abilities, not only the free will, but the ability to actually do battle with them, and it is possible to defeat them. One just has to know how. It's a tricky enemy. It's a tricky enemy, nonetheless, with the right approach, the right attitude, Hashem will help us. We're not here just to fight it on our own. Hashem will help us all the way through if we have the will. And that's what really matters the most. If there's a will, there's a way. In the beginning of the chapter, he mentioned the Zohar. The Zohar gives us an example of how a block of wood may be very difficult to ignite. The fire of Hashem, the light of Hashem, the fear of God, sometimes cannot penetrate so easily. It's a block of wood. It is very thick. And the way to do it is to splinter it, to break it up, to crush it. Once it is crushed, it is easier for the pieces to ignite. This is all, of course, metaphoric of midat ha'anava, of the character of humbleness. The characteristic of humbleness is, in the end, very important in enabling one to defeat the Yetzer Hara, to defeat his evil inclination, the Sitra Achara, because it is only by feeling how low he is in comparison to what his true potential is, that perhaps he will be disappointed at himself, ashamed of himself, in realizing that he could have achieved so much more. So this type of humbleness, this type of feelings, not depression, but a certain type of disappointment in himself, being ashamed, this could lead him to defeat, to weaken the evil inclination in a very, very powerful way. Because in the end, if you try to argue with it logically, it's not going to work. There are many, many excuses with which the evil inclination attempts to justify something for us. Very difficult to just argue with it. There must be some more powerful medicine that can help us deal with this. We must remember that even though this is a spiritual war, a spiritual battle, in many, many ways it is similar to a physical battle, as the Tanya explained earlier. In a physical battle, you have two players, one trying to knock down the other. If the one who is about to fall down senses that he's about to lose, does he just give up? No, he tries his best to overpower the other one. And sometimes we have to look for all kinds of ways and means to overpower. And as I said earlier, it is not impossible. Hashem does never put us in a situation which is impossible for us to deal with. We have been given the tools, just sometimes we don't have the know-how. And that is why it's so important to study, to learn Torah, and to receive the proper direction in how to do battle. So that is a little bit of what we discussed last week, how humbleness is a very powerful medication, a powerful weapon, a means by which one can humble or weaken the Sitra Achara. Now in this part of the chapter, I would like to say that the Tanya throws a bomb. What you're about to hear is very powerful. A lot of people don't even know, have no idea on how important this detail is that he's about to present to us. And that is dreams. He says, it is possible through a dream, or through the dreams that we have, to know ourselves much better than we know ourselves while we are awake. Because what is being expressed during the dream, especially during a certain part of the night when the dreams are more lucid, more clear, is our neshama. In the earlier part of the night, after we have eaten and we still have the experiences of the day or the week fresh in our memories, the dreams are usually nonsense. It is a lot of imagination mixed up with all kinds of memories of the past. But towards the morning, as the food has been digested, there's more clarity. And that is when we are able to see real dreams. The majority of our dreams, however, are not real. It is only towards the end of the night, sometimes, that we're able to see certain things, and that will always depend on the level of the neshama, the level of the soul. The greater the level of the individual, the more righteous he is, the more pure, the cleaner his thoughts, the better his dreams will be. If he's thinking about the wrong ideas during the day, if he's under tremendous stress and pressures, then he may not have that kind of clarity. But here, the Baal HaTanya doesn't get into all the types of dreams. His main point is as follows. If an individual would really, really be pure, if he would really be righteous, if he would conduct himself properly, then his soul, his nefesh Eloki, his divine soul, would be able to rise at night while asleep to a very, very high level and be able to see certain dreams that are good, that are positive, healthy, that will guide him, that will share with him what he needs to know to rectify himself. Good dreams, not nightmares, not bad dreams. But wait a minute, where do the bad dreams come from? And he says all these bad dreams, including nightmares, very possibly come from an impure source, from the Sitra Achara, from that side. Because it is very possible, depending on the individual, what he has done, or how he conducts himself in general, that the impurities, of all types of impurities, somehow attach themselves to him. And they attach themselves very much at night. The night is a time of judgment, a time of dinim. That is when they have pretty much free reign, almost. And certain types of demons penetrate the dream. There's all kinds of demons. Some of them penetrate the dream. And what some people see, and perhaps a lot of people see, are demons that are generated or brought about by demons. All kinds of demons. And these kind of dreams are no good. They're no good, first of all, because many times they try to scare us. They make fun of us. Even though sometimes they tell us things that are true. Things that will happen in the future. The problem is that all of that information sometimes is muddled with a lot of lies, because they're into lying. They come from the source of sheker, of lies, of falsehood. So therefore, their nature is to implant information that's false, misleading. So this, combined with dreams that are very, very scary, and dreams that are very unclean sometimes, can cause tremendous problems to an individual who's having these dreams. But many times it's pretty much his fault. Either he did not say Kriyat Shema before he went to sleep, which is a protection. Either he has no mezuzah on the door, or he lacks some other protection. So they are able to penetrate, they're able to infiltrate and invade his mind at night when he's asleep. Obviously, those people who are asking for trouble and who do things that are wrong during the day, then the door is wide open at night for those elements to enter. But what the Baal HaTanya emphasizes here is, through these kind of dreams, or the lack of them, one can tell a lot about his spiritual level. Because if he's not having very good dreams, very clean dreams, it is indicative of his very low spiritual level. The better the dream, the purer the dream, where he sees beautiful scenery, righteous individuals, those who have passed away, even relatives. Everything is calm, and perhaps even informative about the future, about the present, but in a very calm way, without too much confusion and without being scared, as though he was alive. This is indicative of a nature that is, I guess you can say, refined individual who's doing things in the proper way. So a lot can be seen, or a lot can be, I guess, learned from a dream as far as the spiritual level of the individual. So this in itself, the Baal Tanya says, could be a big help for an individual trying to determine where he is at, as far as being close to Hashem or far from Hashem, depending on the nature of his dreams. So if he notices that he's really not experiencing good dreams for a long time, he should do a cheshbon hanefesh, in other words, a self-examination, a reckoning. And this kind of reckoning, as a result of not having good dreams, can also lead to a greater form of humbleness. Look at yourself. You're not having good dreams. Look how far you are from Hashem. They don't elevate your soul as high as it could be, as high as it could go if it would be pure. It's a shame. The nefesh ha-behemi, the animalistic soul, is always present, even while we're asleep. That's what makes the heart pump the blood. So most dreams are going to have a combination of, if they're true dreams, of that which is true and that which is untrue. Memories, imagination, things like that. Because of the animal soul. So there is memories. However, the rabbis do tell us that a real dream is 1/60th of prophecy. Prophecy, prophetic message from Hashem, is very powerful. It comes by way of a dream. So a real dream is 1/60th. That means on some level, it is like a small prophecy. So imagine if an individual was righteous, pure, he would be able to know certain things just from the dreams. This is besides Ruach HaKodesh, besides being divinely inspired, that some people have those abilities while they're awake, that they know certain things. Here, through a dream, it is a medium through which Hashem communicates with us. Especially today that we have no prophets. We have no Urim V'Tumim, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, who would be able to tell us all kinds of things. So how does Hashem communicate with us? In various ways, but one of them, a very powerful way, is a dream. So if we're not having any dreams at all, or if we're having bad dreams, it's something to look into. Why is this happening? There are various explanations for it. But here, again, he doesn't get into all the explanations, all the possibilities. He just quotes the Zohar, how the Zohar discusses a little bit more in detail how the impure forces can sometimes penetrate the dream. And it's through this type of dream that one can see how far he is from Hashem. And he quotes the Pasuk, Mi ya'aleh behar Hashem. Who's the one that will rise to the mountain of Hashem? Right? Neki chapayim, uvar levav. One who is a clean hand, one who has clean hands and a pure heart. An honest individual, a sincere individual, a man of truth. If he's not going up behar Hashem, if he's not going up so high, it is indicative that perhaps he's not clean after all. And that is why he's seeing all kinds of dreams coming from demons and all impure forces invading his dream at night, because he's basically unclean. So he's attracting them. Whereas if he would be completely clean, they would have no permission to enter his dreams whatsoever. He acts sometimes like a magnet. Just like the halakha is about a cadaver. In other words, someone passed away, there's tum'ah, there's impurity. Why is there impurity there all of a sudden? Because while the soul was there were holy sparks in that vessel, in that body. Once that soul has departed, has left, the impure forces who nourish from holiness, they invade that vessel. So that vessel, that body becomes tameh, because they're all there. They're drawn to it. It's like a magnet. They nourish from kedusha. Without holiness, they would not survive. Still, when you have someone who's unclean, he's basically a customer. He's basically someone that they would go after. And he's inviting them. And there are people who actually see them even while they're awake in certain places of the world where they are around. They can even be seen. But here we're not talking about experiencing them while one is awake. But during the night, when the body is at rest, when the neshama is finally able to release itself from the chains of the body and experience something a little bit more spiritual, it has a choice. It could experience something holy or something unholy too. And that is why he says this is something that one should take to heart. One should really, really examine his dreams from time to time, and hopefully this too will make him feel heartbroken, ashamed of himself. How come they're after me? How come they're extinguishing that light from me, that Or Ein Sof, that I'd love to see, that I'd love to experience? How come they're not letting me get closer? The Tanya continues on to say that that is why the more one immerses himself in studying, learning about these topics, in the various books that are available, the more he thinks about it, the more humble he will become, the more ashamed of himself he will be, to the point of where he's mo'es benafsho. In other words, he will totally dislike himself. He will be so upset at himself. He says these kind of feelings are sometimes powerful medication that can really break the sitra achara. And it does so. In other words, the sitra achara is a powerful foe. It causes a lot of people to commit all kinds of offenses, crimes. It's all the sitra achara. The kedusha does not want war. The kedusha does not want people to hurt each other or to do something against Hashem. I mean, obviously not. The sitra achara, on the other hand, does want it. That's what it was created for. And when an individual sees that he's being drawn more towards that than towards the kedusha, and he thinks about it, and he learns about it, hopefully he will come to terms with it. But unfortunately, the majority of people in the world do not stop to think about it. They don't learn enough. They don't know that their cravings, their interests in life are so shallow and so not significant. Because there's an olam haba waiting for us. Olam haemet, the real world, the afterlife. So we're only here temporary. I mean, imagine if somebody told you, you have 10 years to live. To the minute. 10 years exactly. What would you do with those 10 years? Obviously, somebody who values olam haba, the afterlife, and he knows that every minute matters and every good deed counts, then hopefully he will be smart enough to invest his time in mitzvot, in ma'asim tovim, in good deeds. But most people don't do that because they think they have all the time in the world. It's not 10 years, 30, 40 years, depending on their stage in life. And they don't necessarily value the mitzvot and ma'asim tovim the way they should. So therefore, life for them is a waste, a complete waste. All they do is eat and sleep, work, make money, go on vacation, and that's it. Watch a movie, read a newspaper, that's it. And even if they have a family and they go out together, that's what their life is all about. There's no spiritual content. There's no ambition, no aspiration to be a better person, to grow spiritually, to become more connected with Hashem. They don't see the importance of that. So they don't value the time. But time is the most precious asset that we have. So when one becomes humble as a result of his learning, one of the immediate reactions to the humbleness is, I'm so ashamed of myself. How come I did all this? How come I wasted all this time? Look where I am, where I could be, had I done things differently. So this is very powerful, he says. This type of humbleness can really bring down the sitra achara, can crush it to the point that it comes down from its height to the bottom. What does it mean from its height to the bottom? It means two things. One, is that this Sitra Hara has gasut ruach, it has arrogance. It is through its arrogance that it diminishes the light, or attempts to darken the light, to block the light of Hashem from the neshama. It's through its arrogance, by making itself more important. And that is what materialism does. It tells people, I'm important. Money is important. It elevates itself. It's arrogant. It makes itself important. And by doing that, it diminishes or blocks the light of Hashem, which is really much more important, no comparison. So here, the humble individual is making it fall down. It's money. Money's not going to make me happy. Look what it did to others. You know what would happen to this world if people would only learn from the mistakes of others and not repeat the same mistakes? It would be a different kind of world, but people don't learn. They don't learn from the history. They don't learn from the past. They don't learn from other people's mistakes. They repeat the same mistakes. This type of humbleness brings the Sitra Hara crashing down from its arrogance. But it's not only the Sitra Hara. When we do an act, the Balatani says, when we do an act down here below, Itaruta de letata causes an itaruta de le'ela. Our ma'asim, our deeds down here, cause a certain reaction in the upper world. If we bring the Sitra Hara crashing down, so does Hashem. Lower its stature. And the Yetzer Hara basically is told, keep off, stay away from this individual. He's one. You can no longer approach him because he is one. In other words, Hashem helps the individual further. Since he brought him down, Hashem says, I bring him down from above as well. I will lower his stature. I will not let him get any closer to you. He has no more permission to come into your dream. Well, that's great. If that's the case, the neshama then goes up at night to its highest level that it's allowed, according to the level of the neshama, and is able to see and experience a whole different kind of dream. Nothing stands in the way, as opposed to the other individual who is unclean, who is involved in all kinds of shady business. So when he dreams, he's going through, his soul is trying to go up, it's getting caught in the middle by all kinds of impure forces trying to invade his dream. He can't get through, he can't go out too high. That is why he doesn't see the beautiful dreams that others do see. Okay, so far what we've seen is all kinds of approaches to break the Sitra Hara, including humbleness, including analyzing one's dreams, but now he takes it one step further. He says sometimes you need even more powerful medication. What could be more powerful than what we just said? So he says, you have to yell at the evil inclination. You have to yell at the Sitra Hara. You have to chastise it and say, how dare you take me away from Hashem? How dare you try to take away that light from me, to obstruct that or of Hashem from me? You are despicable. You are wicked. You are bad and evil. And you call it all the names that our rabbis called the Sitra Hara. And you use it in a way that you're upset at it by yelling at it. Yelling to yourself, of course, in your thoughts. So you're no longer just ashamed, but you're upset. And who are you upset? Not necessarily at yourself. Upset at it, at this power, at the Yetzer Hara. You menuval, you rasha. All these harsh words and descriptions of what the Sitra Hara is all about. And you wonder why this helps? Yes, it does help. For the following reason, Tanya says, Lolam, he brings down the Gemara, Lolam yargiz adam yetzer tov al yetzer hara. If one wants to win, it is important that he take the initiative. If we are always going to be on the defensive, it's going to be a lot harder to fight. That is what the rabbis tell us. Always take the initiative. For example, don't let the enemy through the door. Lock it. Don't let them in. If you let the bear in to the cabin, you can't win. against the bear. Once he's in, don't open the door. If the door is locked and closed, well, hopefully he won't break through. You won't see a reason to go in. One has to always be on the offensive, not on the defensive. If we have to now be on the defensive because we've done the wrong things and now we have to, I have to hold myself back. Hold yourself back from doing something wrong is very difficult because you have to control yourself. Don't put yourself in that situation. So take the initiative by doing the right things to begin with, by staying away from trouble. Because once you got yourself into trouble and you have to defend yourself and control yourself, it's very, very difficult. Obviously, we don't always have that choice, the option of defense, offense. But in general, the rabbis tell us you're better off. Lehargiz yetzera tova yetzera. What does it mean? Lehargiz. It means to rouse. To rouse and to give more strength to the yetzera tov, to the positive inclination over the bad inclination, by giving it more strength, by doing the right things. But the rabbis use the word yargiz. Yargiz does not only mean to rouse and to empower, and to take the initiative, but also to use that power to show the evil inclination that you are upset. You're very upset at it. How come he took you away? How come he made you do this? So this, he calls another method of doing battle with the sitra hara, with the evil forces. Yar'im. Yar'im means show them that you're very upset at them, that you're very angry at them. And hopefully, by being upset at one's nefesh behemi, by being upset at one's animal soul, by thinking how terrible it has been to follow the directions that it gives you instead of the directions of the Yetzirah Tov, hopefully this will give him enough power to stay away from him, to not befriend him, to disconnect from him in the future, to completely sever a connection with the evil forces to which or to whom one was very, very friendly all these years is very difficult. You can't do that in one day. To just sever the connection, I'm no longer your friend, I'm no longer your customer. If you were with them for a long time, you just can't let go of it. It is a process. When an individual wants to rehabilitate himself from a certain addiction, it doesn't happen in 24 hours, not even in 1 week. Yes. Yes, sure. Right. We're talking about an individual, of course, who is fully aware. He's cognizant of the fact that he has both. He has the nefesh eloki and the nefesh behemi. He has the divine soul and an animal soul. But he knows that his essence, his true essence, is his neshama, his divine soul, not his animal soul. The animal soul is what enables him to stay alive. He needs to eat, right? He needs to sleep. He needs to be physically active. So the two of them, the two souls, share the same vessel. And it is because the divine soul is dressed up or caged in together with the animal soul that it does not have complete control. It basically has to share the same vessel. And the question will be, who has the upper hand? The majority of people, unfortunately, do not let their divine soul have the upper hand because they don't do the right things to enable it to direct or to lead this individual through his life. They empower a lot more the physical drives or the physical soul by eating a lot, enjoying all the pleasures of life, doing all those things that give the fuel to the animal soul. Whereas the spiritual soul is deprived with no food, no strength, and it's just there in the back seat, not being able to do almost anything. Except for on a few occasions. Shabbat, if Shabbat is kept properly, that spiritual soul has a little bit more power than during the weekday because that physical soul is somewhat partially dormant. not working, right? At night, the body's asleep. Finally, the neshama says, well, let's get something going. The problem is that neshama cannot go too high because during the day, that body was immersed in all kinds of tumah impurity by doing all kinds of terrible things. So, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, during the high holidays, well, if this individual really, really felt bad and said selichot and he's heartbroken and he examined himself, I didn't give enough tzedakah this year, I hurt somebody's feelings, I spoke Lashon Hara, he does real examination, then maybe he will be heartbroken and he will finally let that neshama take the lead. But that takes work. And how many people are willing to work so hard? Now, if somebody's 300 pounds overweight, I think he might be motivated to go on a diet. Especially if they tell him, listen, you want to get married? There's a nice girl there, but she wants you to lose 300 pounds. We got to get him motivated. And he might become motivated. After all, he knows it's unhealthy. His doctor told him that he only has a few years left to live. But how are we going to motivate someone that it pays for you to lose all these sins? Go on a diet of sins. For what reason? The spirituality is not something that people see or identify with unless they learn. So going back to what we've been saying many, many times, learning is key. Because without that, how are we going to convince anybody that this is true, that this is good, that this is healthy? Try it. They won't even want to try it. So it's a very, very difficult battle. Lucky is a parent. Fortunate are the parents of a child who possesses a fine soul, a gentle soul, because his chances are easier, better for him to pick up all that is being studied here in this book. If he's a gentle soul, a refined character, he has a better chance that this will stick to him. But imagine somebody who's very, very interested in all that life has to offer, physicality. This is too demanding of him. This is strict. People are upset at this. If you try to implement this, what are you doing? And this is unfortunately the problem that humanity has had from the very beginning. Whether it was jealousy, whether it was arrogance, whether it was anger, all the qualities that the animal spirit has, that is expressed even amongst the more religious and observant people who know the emet, they know the truth, but they can't control themselves because they don't learn. They don't realize how damaging this is. So look how beautiful he lays it out over here, telling us in very clear terms. You can win this battle, but you have to bring yourself down a little bit. You have to humble yourself. You have to be upset at yourself. You have to be ashamed. You got to realize that this enemy is after you, and he's blocking all that beautiful light from you. And you know what? Even in a dream, you'll be able to notice this. So he continues on to say that part of this arguing with the Yetzer Hara, by lashing out at it, has to be in a very, very vociferous, very, very strong way, by telling it, how could you take me away from Hashem, who's always been around, who's going to always be around? As it says, Ani Hashem lo shiniti. Hashem says, I never changed. The same Hashem, who's lemala me'azman, who's above time. And you, menuval, you who try to distort the truth that is so visible, that is so clear, how could you take me away from this? How could you block that light from me? Because in the end he says, before Hashem, nothing exists. Nothing at all exists. Nothing can compare to him. And now he points out something very, very significant. He says, and I know this with clarity. In other words, when you are upset at the evil inclination, when you yell, when you tell it off, how could he do this to you? You have to be convinced 100% that what you're saying is so clear to you that you have no doubts about it. He says because there's two levels of understanding, two ways of knowing the truth. One is with clarity, as though you can see it, and one that you can understand it. You know it, it's logical to you. He says when something is much more visible, when something is clear to you, it's more powerful than something that you just know, something that makes sense to you, something that you studied. When something is studied, that could bring you close to Hashem. That can make you want to bring you close to Hashem. But something that is very clear to you, very visible, muchashi, that you feel it, you know it, that is much more powerful in the way that it can actually bring you leidbatlut, to self-nullification, for one to be completely submissive to Hashem, to let go of his attachment to the nefesh habehemi, to the animal soul. It requires, as he said earlier several times, hitbatlut. You have to nullify yourself, be submissive. So knowing something is good. When you learn about it, it will make you perhaps desire and have an interest in getting close to Hashem. But that's not the same. It doesn't come close to one who actually knows it for a fact. It's so real to him. I'll give you an example. Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Jewish people, "Ata horeta ladat keshem Elokim." It has been shown to you, it has been demonstrated to you, to know that Hashem is God. To know, why not to believe? What's the difference between to know and to believe? Well, even though we use them sometimes interchangeably, emunah means I believe, but I'm not 100% sure. I believe it to be true. When you say I know, I have no doubts. You see the difference? And the Rambam says the same thing at the very beginning of his famous book, Yad HaChazakah, that it is imperative for one to begin by knowing. It's the pillar of all pillars. Yesod HaYesodot ve'amud HaChochmot. It's the pillar of all wisdom. Leida, to know sheyesh Shem Matzui, that there is a beginning, that there is an entity that began all of this, who created this. So we need to know this, not to have just plain faith, which is what some people have. Faith, which is very, very nice, but is very different. It's a lot less than one who's confident. I have no doubt whatsoever. Hashem runs the world, and whatever He wants is what will be. And that, of course, midah of knowledge, of yediyah, helps one attain bitachon in Hashem, trust in Hashem, not just emunah. There are some people that have emunah, and some people that have, as we call it in Farsi, tavakol. Right? Bitachon in Hashem. I trust in Him completely. That is a higher level of emunah. And that's why he says, we're talking about an individual who's so upset, who realizes how much he has strayed, how the Sitra Achara has gotten a hold of him, what it's trying to do to it. When he knows clearly that it's so wrong, he knows it clearly, not just that he read about it. Even though read about it is good too, but here we're talking about somebody who knows it clearly, then it's easier for him to let go, and to humble, to bring down that Sitra Achara. So he continues on to say that when an individual realizes that the Sitra Achara is really nothing compared to the light of Hashem, compared to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's nothing. It is as though it doesn't exist. But it does have the ability to give him trouble, to give him a hard time, even though it is really nothing. As he soon explains, all you got to do is shine a little bit of light and it drives away the darkness. Darkness is nothing. Mitbatel. It could go away, it could vanish. All you got to do is introduce a little bit of light. Yeah, even though he knows this, the problem is that that darkness in the meantime is making it dark for him. Yes, but you got to get it you got to drive it away. You simply got to drive it away. And when you know that it is nothing compared to Hashem, when you know it's really insignificant, that it could be driven away with a little bit of light, then that will help. It says that will help his nefesh eloki to be illuminated with the knowledge, the true knowledge of the Ora Ein Sof, In other words, once he removes all that darkness from the way, he will be able to have, or to gain a lot more clarity about what he's missing. But when he's completely immersed in darkness, how could he know? So obviously the first step is to learn, and then little by little to strengthen his Yetzer HaTov, as he said, to give it more power, to go out on the offensive after the Yetzer Hara, and to find the weak spots that need to be remedied. Because everybody has some weak spots, something that needs to be remedied, something that needs to be corrected. He goes on to say that this is the shoresh, kol ha'avodah, this is really the root of our entire service of Hashem, is really to know with clarity how important our kesher with Hashem is, how significant it is that we be close to Him, and Chas v'Shalom, God forbid, not close to the other side. That is very, very significant, to know it, not to just believe it. He finishes up the perek as follows. He says, the reason why we can really win in this battle, the reason why it's really possible, is not only because Hashem said so, that it's possible, obviously, but the reason it works is because as much as this is a formidable foe, the Yetzer Hara, the Sitra Hara, it really doesn't compare to the light of Hashem. It really doesn't compare to the power of the Kedusha. It has a lot of power, but he says it's really not that much. You think it is. But take, for example, a craving that somebody may have towards a piece of cake. He really, really wants to eat a piece of cake. And not because he's hungry, just he has a ta'ava. It's a very strong ta'ava. I'm sure you know what I mean. You know, people have this type of ta'ava for many things. But haven't you once held yourself back and says, no, I'm not going to have it now? For whatever reason. I'm sure, I think it has happened more than once that people have held themselves back. Well, you could do it. You've held yourself back. And maybe you were even proud of yourself after the fact that you've held yourself back. Because it showed that you can make a decision, you're independent, you're not a puppet here, you're not necessarily going to just fall into it. You could think about it and decide otherwise. And I just gave you a piece of cake as an example, but it could be anything. So it is possible. And the reason why this is possible is very encouraging, what he tells us here. Because really, this koach is not as powerful as you think it is. Even though it's powerful, it's not so powerful. You can really win. You can really gain the upper hand by driving it away, by humbling yourself. But it takes that kind of medication sometimes. You can't just say, no, it's asur. It's hard to argue with it. We're not on that kind of a level. We can just say, no, this is wrong. Because if you do that, it might tell you, no, now it's okay. I gave you many examples in the past. One of my favorite is on Shabbat. You find a $100 bill on the street. So what's going to be the reaction? So what do you say? You see a $100 bill, fresh from the bank, a fresh $100 note. And you know, Shabbat, we can't pick it up, we can't carry it. It's Motzeh, it's Shabbat. Yeah, so you say you should sit on it till after Shabbat is over. That's good if it's an hour before Shabbat is over, maybe, I'll agree with you. But what if it's Friday night? Right. So people might say, well, I could really use it, I can give some of it for tzedakah. All kinds of excuses. People don't realize that it's asur. But why isn't asur enough? The halakha says asur, you can't touch it. It's not enough. You go on the freeway, 65 miles an hour speed limit. How many cars are zooming by at 80, not 70, 80? Huh? I'm sure you see it all the time. Why? It's asur, it's against the law. So what do you say? If you ever have a chance, ask the policeman, by the way, what are the excuses that people have told you for speeding? They were caught speeding. Oh, you'll be surprised. As they say in Hebrew, there's so many excuses from A to Z of what people give, why they were speeding. Are they justified? Most of them no. The only one that's maybe a little justified is your wife is about to give birth. and you're rushing to the hospital. People are tempted, people are driven to do certain things that they like, that they enjoy, and they don't see always the pitfalls, they don't see the problems with it until after the fact. The consequences you don't see until afterwards. What the speed may have done, how unsafe it was, or if it was something else, how it was not such a good idea to pick a fight with someone. You only see the consequences later on. So, in fighting the Yetzer Hara, it is possible, it's definitely possible to argue with it and to say, this is wrong. Yeah, you could do that. The problem with that is that as soon as you do that, it will come up with some sort of excuse. No, you know what, this time it's okay. Nobody's watching. Yeah, but Hashem is watching. Nah, it's okay, Yom Kippur. Forgive you. You know, there's all kinds of ways that the Yetzer Hara, the Sitra Hara, will try to manipulate you to believing that it may be okay. So be careful not to argue, and not just to say it's wrong. You need powerful medication to get under control. Humbleness is one. Submissiveness. Realizing that this is causing permanent damage to my soul. Very difficult later to repair this kind of damage. It's not worth it. The rabbis have a lot of advice. I mean, here, he's just giving us one of the most powerful medication. But in reality, the rabbis tell us, listen, always evaluate your actions. Is this right or not? What am I about to gain? What am I about to lose? Most people are too impulsive. They're reactionary. They don't evaluate their actions. They act too fast. If people would always think before they do something, especially something important, they wouldn't make so many mistakes. Is it really pay to do this? What am I going to gain? And what am I going to lose? Imagine a couple before they get divorced. They really thought about it. What are we going to gain? What are we going to lose? What about the kids? What are they going to feel if there's a divorce? The kids are usually hurt the most. More than the adults themselves, the parents. And the parents don't think too much into it. Does it really pay? I mean, there are times where divorce is the only choice. It's the last resort, but it's the only choice sometimes. But people don't think about it enough. And then they cause tremendous damage. So that is why the emphasis here is on various approaches to deal forcefully with the Yetzer Hara, forcefully. The last one was yell at it, because you got to get it out of your system. You got to really remind yourself how bad it is by being upset at it, and of course ashamed at yourself for having misled you all this time. But in the process of doing that, you might think that it's not so easy. So he reminds us it is in some ways, because all it is darkness, and it's really something that has no mamashut, something that has no substance. You can do away with it very easily, just like light drives away darkness. Even though this formidable foe does have a lot of power. After all, the Sitra Hara is the one that's responsible for the hayut, for the vitality of all the unclean animals, the neshamot of the world, the rest of the world, the nefesh behemi, the animal soul of the Jew. It does wield a lot of power. It does control a lot. But he says that power comes from the Kedusha. That doesn't come from itself. It doesn't really have any power from itself. Everything that he has is from the Kedusha. And because the Kedusha wants it to do battle, it wants it to do battle in order for us to look for a way to overpower it. That's what life is all about. The Kedusha wants it to try to bring down this individual, to attempt to convince it, in order to get us to overcome it. And this is how we are rewarded. So Hashem, because of that, gave it permission and the ability to tempt, and to convince. Hashem gave it that ability. And unfortunately, many people fall for it. We see that it has a certain rate of success with a lot of people. And what is it really doing at the time that it is trying to convince someone? This power is trying to elevate itself above everything else. Like we said earlier, it's a certain arrogance where this power is attempting to convince the individual that I'm the most important thing in life. Money is everything, as an example. So it has elevated itself in the eyes of many people. The only way to deal with it effectively is to bring it down, crashing down. How can you bring it crashing down? Through humbleness. Yell at it. Be upset at it. In other words, this approach of being mashpil, bringing it down to the ground, is perhaps the most powerful of all. Even though the Gemara does talk about reminding yourself of the day of death, if you recall that. If one sees that the Yetzer Hara is just trying to overcome him, and very, very powerful Yetzer Hara, just as a last resort, think of the day of death. Because the day of death will bring a little bit of, not just will bring you back into the proper perspective of what is about to happen, and allow you to focus properly. It is also a little bit depressing and serious. Thinking of the day, yes, one day they're going to bury me on the ground. One day they're going to cover me with shrouds. One day they're going to say Tehillim, Kaddish, and light a neshama, a candle for a neshama. And sometimes that's what needs to be done, to have these thoughts. And he talks about that in different words, that when one learns about these things, it definitely helps him. But he took it one step further. He says you have to really attack it, not just to think about it. Think about it is good. It definitely will put into you feelings or an interest, a desire to get close to Hashem, as we said. Learning about something, reading about it in books that deal with these topics is definitely healthy. And it will want you, it will awaken you to get close to Hashem. But there's something better than that. And that is to have complete clarity of it. To have complete clarity of it, as though you know it for a fact, that requires more powerful action. And humbleness and yelling at it and being upset. Get out of my way. And this obviously would help. Not too many people do this. But this is, if he's telling this to us, obviously he knows for a fact that this is what's necessary to bring it down, to lower its importance in our eyes. How dare you take me away from Hashem? You know. Otherwise, if one does not have that attitude, he's thinking to himself, okay, it's not the end of the world. Nothing bad happened. It's okay. I mean, it's not right, but most people don't realize the seriousness, the gravity of certain offenses. They take it in stride. Okay, it's not so bad. No, it is bad. It's damaging. Because if you want to completely get away from it, it's going to take a lot of work now. And you could have been a lot more ahead at this stage in your life. Had for the last 10 years, you not wasted all this time in pursuing nonsense. So Hashem has given the Sitra Achara the ability and the permission to try to convince us of what it wants to sell to us. But on the other hand, we have the ability to overcome it, to defeat it, and to not let it influence us. And once we take the first steps, as we said earlier, Hashem will also help us along the way to bring it down from its power base up there. Once we have taken the first steps to weaken our connection to it, then Hashem says, I'm going to take you down as well from upstairs. In other words, you're not going to have that much influence anymore over him. That is very, very important. Because otherwise it can come back. You won today, you can lose tomorrow. And you should know that every time we win, it counts. It doesn't mean that even though tomorrow we lose, that's it. No, as long as we win some of the times, it already counts, it matters. And hopefully, little by little, the more we win, the easier it will be in the future for us to continue to do the right things and to stay away from trouble. He brings us an example of how this approach has helped in the Torah. He brings the example of the Meraglim. Remember the spies? When the spies came back from Israel, they were very unsure about if it's a good idea to go to Israel. Remember? Ki chazaku mimeno, they said. As the Midrash explains, they said, those inhabitants of the land, those kings, they're more powerful than him. In other words, even with Hashem's help, we won't be able to defeat them. That is why they didn't want to go in. That's one explanation. How come they later changed their mind when they said, okay, inenu ve'alinu, let's go? They did say that later. A group of them wanted to go. Why should they say that, he says? Hashem did not show them any, Moshe did not show them any mofet, any miracle. What convinced them now to go? What made them change their mind? All Moshe did was tell them how Hashem is upset at you. How he swore not to bring you into the land anymore. You're not going to come in. You are not going to see the land. Your children will. How come that anger made a difference? If they did not believe that Hashem could help them win, then why would the anger of Hashem make them change their mind? So he says a very important idea. You know what? All Jewish people really do believe. Ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim. They are believers, son of believers. They have the emunah in them. It's just because the Sitra Hara dresses itself up in them. In other words, the Sitra Hara basically takes over the Nefesh Eloki, blocks the light from it, elevates itself, rises to a very high point where it diminishes the light of Hashem through its arrogance and through its chutzpah, without any logic, without any good excuse. It just does so by making itself appear more important than the Nefesh Eloki. And that is why sometimes a Jew may forget himself about the truth. So right away when Hashem was upset at them, and he told them, Ad matai la'ida hazot, till when are they going to test me? Bamidbar yiplu pigrechem, and he continued to rebuke them, that your corpses will remain in the desert. Ani Hashem dibarti im lo zot eseh. All these words that Moshe is communicating to them, how upset Hashem is with them. When they heard all of this, all of these harsh words, all of this rebuke, what happened? They became humbled. Their heart became humbled. Vaytablu ha'am me'od. They were in mourning. So this type of humbleness, this type of feelings of regret and remorse, made the Sitra Hara fall down, at least for now, for the moment, from its high level of where it was before. It was controlling them, and now through their humbleness, which came about through Hashem being so upset at them, as soon as they heard those words, they became humbled, and that made the Sitra Hara tumble down all the way. So this, he says, this is how he finishes the Perek. You see, Jews really do believe. Every Jew really has emunah in his heart, in his soul. He knows the truth deep down. And throughout our history, they've always believed. Even though there were some who were very far from emunah, deep down they all believed. And it just was something that was missing in their life that unfortunately did not ignite that emunah for it to become a flame, a light that would guide them in the right direction. They just simply were deprived of a Jewish education, did not have all the help they could have had, and because of where they lived. And Hashem sometimes just sends them down in a reincarnation to be given a second chance to lead a proper life. But in the neshama, the ability is always there. And if it were to receive what it needs, then hopefully, Mizat Hashem, it will have the strength to fight off the Yetzer Hara. From this, he says, every human being can learn something. And that is that even though there sometimes are doubts of emunah that fall, that come to his mind, doubts about faith, all kinds of questions, he should know, he should realize at that moment that those doubts are coming in, that they come from the Sitra Achara. They are really words being spoken to him. Those doubts being planted in him are really words or suggestions of the impure forces. But this impure forces, in reality, does not have doubts about Hashem. It knows the truth, but it is implanting in the individual doubts, because that's its job. And he reminds us, this is very similar to the example he gave us in chapter 9, of a king who hired a zonah, a harlot, to tempt the prince. And the harlot doesn't want the prince to fall. She really wants him to resist. The king is bringing his son, the prince, into this challenge because he wants him to become strong. He wants him to control himself. So he's putting him through this experiment, right? And the harlot is really hired by the king to try to tempt him. And the harlot brings other harlots, It has other shlichim. And all of this is from Shamayim, in order for us to be rewarded for overcoming that evil inclination. So in the end, all of this is just a test that we can pass, and Hashem wants us to pass. And even the Sitra Achara wants us to pass it, which is interesting. They want us to, well, it depends who you're talking to. The chief of the Sitra Achara knows the truth. It does want us to pass. Obviously, the servants of the Sitra Achara, all the way at the bottom, who are tempting us every single day, they don't care. On the contrary, they love to make us fall. But at the very, very top, the Sitra Achara is just a creation of Hashem, and it knows the truth. It says, I hope you don't fall. I hope you do resist for your own good. But it doesn't tell us. That is the concealment of Hashem in creation. A lot of people do not fully understand. The reason why the creation is this way, where we think that there's no Ashgacha Chasodom, where there's no divine providence, where the evil forces are so powerful, and they seem to be getting away with it. And those who are righteous are so unfortunate and not doing well. Where's justice? This is all because of the concealment of Hashem. Hashem created a world where he conceals himself, but he's still around. He's still Mashgiach, he still supervises. He's still in control, even of the things that appear to us as being so terribly wrong. He's still in control, but he's letting them, he's giving them permission. It's a very difficult and complex world for us, human beings, to understand in such a little bit of time that we have here to live. But the more we learn, the better we will understand, the more clarity we will have. That is why, again, it comes down to learning as much as possible, because it will show us how we can gain the upper hand in controlling all the evil forces, and therefore being able to form a much more stronger bond with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Amen.